this resource. And so we are so blessed to have her this morning. She has over 20 years experience and works with, and correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, but works with children and teens, adults and families, and does all sorts of different counseling for anxiety and depression and eating disorders to family counseling and marriage counseling. And she kind of covers the whole gamut and just has a really good pulse on how to create healthy families. And so she's going to talk to us a little bit this morning about self-care and keeping our own self healthy, which is so difficult for moms. So I was reading, just skimming the documents she sent this morning, and I'm like, oh boy, because that's something that I personally struggle with, is taking care of myself, because it's hard when you have a family, and God created us to be nurturers and to care for our families. And so sometimes we put ourselves on the back burner. So I'm excited to have Julie share with us this morning, and be ready to take lots of notes. She is full of wisdom. And then if you have questions, there's going to be a time at the end where we can answer, or she can answer questions. Put your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get through as many of them as we can. At the very end of the summer, we will have, she's going to be with us a couple of times, but at the end, we'll have an opportunity to go back and answer some questions maybe that have come up since she spoke, or questions that you had that we didn't get to today. And so there'll be another time at a later date to get questions answered. But in the meantime, we'll try to get through as many of them as we can today. And so I will just go ahead and turn it over to you, Julie.
Thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate you letting me be here, and I know that's a really big deal to all of your moms, and I so much love being with you guys last time, and it's not my preference with the whole Zoom thing. I definitely miss being in the same room with you guys, but it is a bonus that at least I can see your name. So that part is good. Can you guys hear me? I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay. So I guess, okay, we're good on that. So let me I know self-care is a very important topic. And by the way, I'm so used to being more like interactional, like when I'm talking. So if you guys have like a burning question, I have my chat thing open. So if you just do like type a message, I can see it. So, and then we'll have, time for questions at the end, like Amy said. But what I wanted to make sure I clarify is that I think when people hear self-care, as moms, we kind of like roll our eyes, we're kind of like, yeah, right. Like, how do I have time for self-care? And I think, one of the things I was seeing on social media, even just for the last month or so, people are talking about like, take care of yourself, self-care, it's so important. And I'm seeing all these moms like, who has time for self-care? Like, that's ridiculous. We're already trying to do so much. And I get that. And I think that is the misconception that a lot of us have about self-care, which is why we just blow it off, which is why as moms, we hear self-care and we roll our eyes and we move on and we continue like on this track of being completely frazzled and overwhelmed. And so I wanted to talk about that. The things you're going to hear me say today is self-care, and I have this on our handout too, but it's more of a state of mind rather than another item on your to-do list. And it's more about choices and how you are spending the time that you have versus needing more time. It's not just about getting, spa days and manicures and pedicures and that kind of stuff. That's not what we're going to be talking about. Although that's great if you can do that maybe once or twice a year, or if you can do it more, then awesome. But you don't have to have a whole spa day in order to take care of yourself. So just want to put that out there to start with. The reason this is so important is because you guys, like as moms, are so, so, so important. And I just want to make sure that all of you guys know what a big deal that is. It is not to be taken lightly. It is not to be underestimated. And I want to go ahead and just compare it right off the bat to, imagine if you were going on an plane ride. I know when I was growing up, every summer we would go out to California. My grandparents lived out in California. And so, every summer we'd have a trip out there. And I always remember my parents, before we would leave, they would pray and they would ask God to help the pilot to be well rested, and to help him to be, healthy and, taking care of himself. And I remember thinking, well, I guess that is important. Yeah, because you wouldn't want the pilot falling asleep while you're, flying across the country. And I know, whenever, I would knew of anybody that would have a surgery or some kind of a major operation done, we're always praying for the doctors, praying for the doctors to be well rested, for helping the doctors to have clarity, helping the doctors, their own personal sense of well-being. And so, nobody questions that, right? I mean, you want the person that is responsible for flying you, across the country, you want that person to be well rested. You want the person that is like literally doing surgery on your heart. You want that person to not have jittery, shaky hands because they haven't eaten breakfast that morning, or, because they are like overloaded on caffeine, or to not have had sleep for 2 days. That's not what you want for the person that's caring for your physical body. And so I guess what I want to say is, as moms, you are raising humans. You are raising humans, and that is so important. And so the things that I hear, when I ask, people, and for myself too, why do you not practice self-care? One is the time that I already mentioned, and then guilt. Moms feel guilty for taking care of themselves, or they feel guilty for taking the time. So it's pretty much guilt, lack of time, and guilt for taking time. And so if you can see it as like, in order for you to do a good job to take care of your child, you have to take care of yourself. Like, you are the captain of the ship. You are the pilot of this plane. You are the surgeon that's operating on the heart. So you are not being selfish by tending to your physical need, your spiritual needs, your emotional, your mental. We're going to talk about all of that because those are all the areas that you are also caring for your child. And so you can't pour out of an empty bucket. If your bucket's empty, it's empty. It's got nothing to give. And so I think that's one reason why, as moms, so often we feel so frazzled. We feel like we're failing all the time because we're just trying and trying and trying. And we're trying, if we see that we're not doing it well, we try harder. But again, we're scraping the bottom of that bucket with nothing in there. And so this is why I really, Amy, I so much appreciate you and Margaret just kind of letting me kind of pray through like what was the way to start this. And so I really do feel like what God is kind of saying it to us is, let's start here. And just to give you guys a tiny bit of background too about myself, as I'm sharing some of this, is so I in the past month, my daughter is now turned 13. My son is 15, so we're working on trying to get his learner's permit, and my daughter is now officially a teenager, and so we're in this like totally new stage of life, which is like super fun and stressful and exciting and crazy all at the same time. And but I do remember the years when they were young very, very, very well. They were very hard in a totally different kind of way. I have been married for 23 years, so that whole piece of it. One of the later talks I'm going to do is on marriage, because that can very much influence, impact your child rearing. So we'll talk about that as well. But want to go back to one of the reasons why, again, self-care is important is I think Jesus kind of just assumes that we know that we do need to love ourselves. Like when it says, I put this verse on the handout I sent to you guys, and Mark 12:31, and this is asked after Jesus has been asked, what is the greatest commandment? And he said that, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second, and I wrote this one down here, the second is this. So right after loving God, it says, love your neighbor as yourself. And notice he doesn't say love yourself, but he says love your neighbor as yourself. So I think the assumption is that we are loving our neighbor because we're able to love ourselves. So if we hate ourselves, if we treat ourselves horribly, I don't think Jesus would say, love your neighbor as yourself. So does that kind of make sense? So this is super important. So I want to kind of get a little bit practical with you guys. I'm looking at my notes here if you see why I'm looking down. again, this is a state of mind. I don't want you to feel like another burden, like, oh, right now I've got to like add taking care of myself to my list of things to do because I'm already, stressed out. So changing your mindset. One of the things that I talk to people about a lot, and I wanted to share a story with you guys about kind of my own journey in this. The mindset of self-compassion versus self-pity is a pretty significant shift. Years ago, in dealing with hard stuff, I kind of reached a place in my life where if I wasn't just feeling like, wow, my life is so hard, kind of almost like feeling sorry for myself and letting my emotions, run wild, I reached this place where I just kind of shut down. I just kind of shut, my heart off for more or less, and wasn't able to be soft, and I wasn't able to be vulnerable. And my way of coping with pain was just to say, literally to myself, it doesn't matter how I feel. I knew I was a mom, I was a wife, I had a lot of stuff to do, I was busy. I knew that I had a lot of jobs and tasks that were very important. And, my feelings about it was really kind of irrelevant. And so that was my mantra that I had lived by for a while. And so, my husband and I were, at one point, several years ago, we were sitting with a counselor as well, seeking godly counsel for ourselves. And I remember the counselor looked at me and he said, well, Julie, how do you feel about that? And I looked at him back and I said, it doesn't matter how I feel. And I will never forget this moment, because I know that literally Jesus was speaking to me through this counselor in this moment. And he had this look of almost like horror and shock and the most compassion that I have ever seen in my life. And he said, it breaks my heart that is what you've been telling yourself all these years. And it just something inside of me just broke, and I just started like weeping, and I started crying. And I knew in that moment that my heart did matter. And I knew that it did matter how I felt, and that it was vitally, vitally important. And it didn't mean that it had to matter to my kids. In the moment, my kids didn't have to get it. Maybe they didn't care how I felt. It didn't even have to matter to my husband. It didn't have to matter to my friends. It didn't have to matter to anybody. But my heart mattered to God. And that, for me, changed everything. And so rather than my spiritual life and my relationship with God being like, okay, now I have to go read my Bible and now I have to pray, like a to-do list of something that I had to do to feel like I was tending to my spiritual life, it became, okay, I cannot wait until I get everybody fed and everybody bathed and everybody to bed and get everything done so I can go just sit for a few minutes with the one who totally gets me and totally knows me and totally loves me. And during that season of my life, those genuinely became my favorite moments. And there was times I would let those moments linger, and I would, go to bed at night and I would put my little earbuds in my ears and I would put on like the worship music where, I love those worship songs where it's like Jesus telling you how much he loves you. Like those are kind of cool. And so I would just like curl up under my blanket and I would just meditate on that and just fall asleep. And that was my way in that season of like God just like retraining my mindset of, wow, my life is pretty hard and nobody really cares and poor me, to if God has compassion and sees like how hard I'm trying and he sees my heart and he loves me, then I can certainly be a little bit kinder to myself as well. And so I call that was my shift from Julie Robot to Julie with a heart. So that was a good shift. So I just want to encourage you guys to kind of think about that. The thing about, when you I have the list here. So changing your mindset, self-compassion versus self-pity, it'll change you from a place of caring for yourself from being critical, so care versus criticism. So when you're critical of yourself, you look at all the things that you're not doing right, all the ways that you're failing, all the ways that you could be doing it a little bit better or maybe a lot better, versus caring for yourself. You know what? Yeah, I got a lot on my plate today. Yeah, I have fed my kids the same thing, 3 meals in a row for 2 days now, but you know what? They're fed, and I'm really tired. I'm trying here. Maybe tomorrow I'll try to cook them something different. Gratitude versus griping, complaining versus like being thankful. That's a huge shift. I think if you look around and if you're looking for things to be thankful for, there's a reason why in one of my favorite Bible verses, Philippians 4:4-7, where Paul is saying, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, with prayer and petition, present your requests to God. It also says right before that to be thankful, because when you are thankful and you look around and you realize the things that you do have and the ways that God has blessed you, it is harder to feel sorry for yourself, and it's harder to be in that like place where you just treat yourself badly. Like you realize that God is blessing you, and that even if it's just the fact that you get to be a mom. I mean, some days, maybe that feels like a harder reality, but the fact that you get to be a mom and you have this little life that's entrusted to you, like that's such a big deal. That's so amazing. So, all right, I need to move on. I can talk a long time sometimes, so I want to be mindful of the time. So the next thing I have under like tips is learn when to say yes and when to say no. This is a really big one. Activities that give you energy versus activities that drain your energy. Probably a lot of you need to say yes more than you do. If somebody is offering, I made this a whole nother item on the list, but if somebody's offering help, if they're saying, hey, you know what, you've got a lot going on right now. Do you mind if I like take your kids out and, just come over and they can hang out at my house for the day, and, I'll just let you have some time by yourself. And you feel bad because you're like, oh, but they're a mom too, and they're busy and they're stressed. Like, no, I don't want to put that on them. And so you're like, no, I'm good. Just say, that'd be awesome. Yes, you can have my kids for a day. I mean, now, of course, with this whole quarantine, social distancing, that's, different right now. But for general life, that would just say yes. If somebody invites you to do something and, you feel like, okay, that would like really like build me up, that would completely like energize me, but you feel kind of guilty, say yes if you can. Not all, I mean, you have to balance it, obviously. But then also sometimes you need to say no. Like, we all have, especially I think, I grew up in the church, and, there's always like so many things to do. And there's always, the busiest people are always the ones that usually seem to get asked first to do all the things. And so you just get used to saying yes. And so again, I think, I probably shared this with you guys before, I think last time I spoke, is that there's kind of the filter that I put it through is to decide if I'm going to say yes or no. Like, one, is it my job? Is it something that I just need to do because I have to feed my children, I have to bathe them, that kind of thing. Is it something that I really want to do? Or is it something that God is really saying, Julie, I want you to do this. It's something that God is leading me to do. If it doesn't fit one of those three criteria, then I really should not be doing it. So again, is it my job? Is it something that I want to do? Or is it something that God is saying to me or leading me to do? Again, if it doesn't fit one of those, it needs to be a no. It's going to take away very precious time, energy, and resources that God does want you to be spending on doing something else. So realize every time that you say yes to something, you are saying no to other things. So just be very intentional about how you spend your time. So I talked already, okay, be willing to ask for help. Most important, accept it when it is offered. I had put a thing on Facebook a couple of days ago because I was just curious, what, some of the moms out there thought about, what is your idea of self-care? What comes to mind? What are some tips that you've learned? And a couple of the people mentioned even asking their husbands for help, which is some of you guys are probably pros of that, and you have awesome husbands that, of course, you think, why wouldn't everybody ask their husbands for help? But others, maybe your husbands don't do it exactly the way you would do it, or maybe their standards or their way of doing things is, different. And so again, that's okay. It's okay. Kids are going to get different. They're going to learn different things from mom and dad. And so sometimes just to walk away, hands off, let dad do it his way. Don't criticize him. Don't tell him you need to do it the same way I do it. Just let him be dad, and let kids like enjoy that and love that, and take that as a blessing and as help for time that you don't have to be thinking about how it's working, that you're going to, come back and they're going to be alive, and they might even be laughing, and they may not have had baths or be in bed, but that's okay. So just enjoy that. So I also wrote down here, do not neglect your spirit and your heart. And that's, kind of what I was sharing with you. My own story is just your mindset and how you view yourself on that. And I want to say too, and there's a season of life, and a lot of you guys may be in this, where you don't have 30 minutes. And you certainly don't have an hour to sit and have this long, lengthy, quiet time with your cup of coffee and your devotional and your Bible. You may not have that right now. If you do, great, enjoy it, and like just take that as a gift. But I remember there was a season, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the little book, Jesus Calling. It's super popular. You've probably read pieces of it. It's like a little devotional. It's about like this big. And for each day it's basically like a paragraph. And so I would literally like stand at my back door. I would hold the little Jesus Calling book. I would let my dogs out to go to the bathroom, in the yard. And as they were out doing their thing, I would read it. So it took me about the length of time, they were out there. And then it would just kind of give me my, what I was going to be contemplating and meditating on throughout as I went around the rest of my morning. And so, as I was making my kids breakfast, or if I was, as I was doing laundry, or, my mind would just drift all over the place. I'd be dealing with the present moment, but then I would drift back to, oh yeah, it said like, just, trust God in this and give thanks. Okay. And so again, it doesn't have to look like a structured, organized, like quiet time, like how we picture, if your life doesn't allow for that right now. And I think to be realistic, because what we do, and I know this because this is what people tell me when they come in my room and the door's closed and nobody else can hear them, is it's an all or nothing thing. If they can't do it the way that they feel like they should do it, then they don't do it at all. And so don't let it be all or nothing. If you can't have your time the way you want, then adapt, be flexible, be creative. The other thing is, sometimes we'd have, when my kids were young, we had these little Praise Baby DVDs, which I loved. And they had like this like little praise music and these little pictures of like bubbles, or like a red ball rolling by, or whatever they have. I'm sure they have stuff similar. And so I'd put that on and just listen to like the worship, and it was honestly more for me than my kids, but it helped me kind of stay in a good state of mind. So that's a way to be taking care of your kids and also like caring for yourself at the same time. I wrote down a couple verses, again, just to kind of make this point that above all else, this is Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So that's kind of a big statement. Everything you do flows from your heart. But yet we're so sometimes careless with our heart, or we're so mean to our own hearts. The stuff that we say to ourselves, we all have these little like scripts that you play in your mind, whether it's like a conscious thing that you tell yourself, or whether it's an unconscious thing you tell yourself. So just figure out what that is. And like my thing of saying it doesn't matter how I feel, well, it matters to Jesus how I feel. So therefore it should matter a little bit. The other verse, Matthew 6:33, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Again, he doesn't say, do all your work, make it all happen, get everything in order, get everything in place, and then come and sit with me. No, he says, seek first his kingdom, and then he's going to help you with everything else. And I will tell you, I see spending my time how kind of similar to tithing, like, especially if you've grown up in the church, you've learned about the principle of like when you are obedient and you do tithe your money, give like a tenth of your money to God, like he just blesses that. He just does. Like it's pretty cool. Like he, I think it's one of the few times in the Bible where he says, test me in this and just watch what I'm going to do for you. I can tell you it's the same way with time. If you will just trust him and say, God, I don't have 5 minutes. I do not have 5 minutes, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to spend 5 minutes just, either praying or listening to a worship song or just something, getting my heart in the right place, like I promise you, you will reap the benefits of that later in your day. I can tell a difference in the morning when I spend 5 minutes and when I don't, and just my mindset and my heart and my focus. So again, super important. One of the pieces along with that is I love to,
I just went in there to give Melanie something. Let me get her stuff.
so I like to do what I call it, like kind of a nurture corner in your home. So you don't have to have a whole room, but if you can find like one little corner in your home where you can sit and you can feel peaceful. It could be hopefully like a really comfy chair. It could be your bed. It could be, ideally it's somewhere, if you're like a clutter person and that bothers you, ideally it's somewhere where it's not facing the clutter, like it's facing away from the clutter. Like it needs to be comfortable. It needs, ideally if you can look out a window or look at something that makes you happy, or have things around it where you have a comfy blanket, have like some of your favorite, like a nice smelling candle, you know, maybe have like a little thing of like hand lotion that has a beautiful smell that just makes you happy. But somewhere where you can sit and feel like you are emotionally, physically, you know, spiritually, whatever it is, kind of wrapping yourself up in a blanket. And taking care of yourself when you have those moments that you feel just kind of overwhelmed. And so, you know, for me, I have a little spot and it's in my living room where I can look out, you know, the front window, and we're not in there a ton, so it doesn't get as messy as some of the other rooms. And it, you know, I've got like all my little books, my Bible, I've got a comfy blanket in. So that again is just very, I think, practical and helpful. Okay, so we're going to move on now. So one of the most important things that you can do on a daily basis, like I said, I don't want you to add a bunch of things on your to-do list, but to be aware of the choices that you are already making and make them good ones. Make them choices that you are taking care of yourself. And so if you have the email that Amy sent out, or that Dana, I guess, sent out. So I have here, it's a self-assessment personal plan. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. But if you have it, pull it out. And if you don't, just grab a piece of paper or a pen. And if you don't have that, you can just kind of think it through in your mind and make mental notes. That works as well. So we're going to go through 4 different categories. And I want this to be practical for you. So I'm going to kind of encourage you guys to think through, okay, what am I doing right now? And then at the end of each category, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, I'm going to ask you, what is one change in each of these areas that I am willing to make to take care of myself better in this area? Okay, it doesn't have to be big. It can be teeny tiny, but even one change is going to help you feel like, oh, I'm taking care of myself. And the truth is that you care more about things that you take care of, and you take care of things that you care more about, if that makes sense. So if you've ever noticed, like, just if you go and like, you know, clean your car out real good, you know, you're like, wow, I really like this car. You know, you like it better just because you've taken care of it, you know, or if you happen to just love your car and you take care of it all the time, great, but probably not with moms because we just don't really have time for that. But so by taking the discipline of doing things to take care of yourself, you will start to care for yourself more. So the first one is physical. So like I said, like Amy said, I do work with eating disorders. So I do see people that struggle with this on a pretty extreme basis. And, but I think most of us struggle with this on a moderate basis, at least. And it's very, very important, and it can affect everything. Is my eating? How much do I eat? Too much, or do I eat too little? Because if you're eating too much on a regular basis, you're just not going to feel good. Your body just doesn't feel good. You feel lethargic. You feel like you don't feel comfortable in your body. You don't feel energetic and healthy. If you eat too little, you do not have enough energy to sustain you. One of the first things to go if you are not getting enough food is you are not able to think clearly. your ability to concentrate, your ability to regulate your moods immediately is affected. Your ability to remember things is immediately affected. So if you're skipping meals on a regular basis, that is not good. So again, make sure you're eating enough. What I always say is, eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, and eat mostly healthy things. Not all healthy things, because then you feel like you're completely depriving yourself, and that's no fun. So that's one of them. And then the next question is, does the majority, not all, of the foods I eat have good nutritional value? And again, the reason that is so important is because think about how your body and your mind and your emotions, how you feel when you have just eaten something that has nutritional content. I know for me, it's so funny. For whatever reason, I love going to Chick-fil-A and getting their Cobb chicken salad with the avocado lime ranch dressing. Like, I feel like $1,000,000 after I have that. I think it's just for my body, whatever it is, like the combination of those veggies and the protein and like the healthy fats and all of that, like I feel energized. I feel good. As opposed to, I love going to Olive Garden and getting their fettuccine Alfredo. I love that. It tastes delicious. And I do it every now and then. I don't feel awesome afterwards though. Like, I'm not feeling like, yes, I'm ready to go run a marathon. It's okay to do both. But just make sure, most of the time you're eating things that are helping you feel good, that are working for you. Am I drinking enough water? Again, I, just recently talked to somebody, that's again dealing like with kidney stones just because they're not drinking water. They just, it's not just because of that, but that's so super important. Our bodies are electrical. Our brain works on electrical impulses. And so when we are thinking, when we are anything that we're doing, it is sending those messages through electrical impulses. So what is the number one conductor of electrical energy is water. So if you are feeling tired and sluggish and you can't focus, you might be dehydrated. So it's amazing what you can do just by drinking a glass of water. It can almost instantly boost your energy and your focus and your mood. So make sure that you are getting enough water throughout the day. Am I drinking more alcohol or caffeine than is good for me? So either of those, and in excess, obviously cannot be good for your brain and for your body, and can lead to all kinds of other stuff. So personally, I do enjoy caffeine in moderation, maybe sometimes a little bit excess, but I've got to keep tabs on that. So, and then am I physically active throughout the day? I like to, again, honestly avoid the word exercise because I think exercise can sometimes be a bad word because it just immediately we hear that word and we feel guilt and we feel like, we're failures and we're not doing it right. Exercise is great if you love doing that, but even just being physically active, doing physically active things with your kids, take them on walks, take them to the park, just doing, like household chores that you have to do anyway. I mean, count that, like that counts. If you're running up and down stairs chasing kids all day, like that counts as physical activity. So, I think completely give yourself credit for that. Like, you don't need to go to the gym and like run, you're already running after your kids. So do I feel rested or am I tired most of the time? If you are tired most of the time, one, it could be you have a, newborn or a young baby or a child that's just not sleeping well at night. So, that it just kind of is what it is. But if you have the opportunity to be sleeping, and you're not, or maybe you're not sleeping well, those are things that you really do need to attend to, because sleep, again, is so critically important. They've also done studies on sleep deprivation, and one of the first things to go when people are sleep deprived, again, is their ability to regulate their emotions. So if you find yourself, yelling at your kids and, flying off the handle and having absolutely no patience at all, ask yourself, am I exhausted? Have I been sleeping? I can tell you, I have, when I'm teaching my children at home, I do like a hybrid, homeschool type of thing with them. And there's times that I'm trying to work on math, with one of my kids. And I'm like, I need to go take a 30-minute nap. I'm sorry. My emotions are not gonna tolerate what we've got ahead of us. And so I have found, even with that, it is worth it to take, 30 minutes and just like those power naps can be amazing. So, and it resets your brain, it resets your emotions, and then, we can go back and try to knock it out. But let yourself nap, let yourself go to bed, let yourself just get that rest that you need. And that's my next one. Do I let myself take naps or occasionally sleep in if needed? Again, that's where if you have somebody that's, if your kids get up early and, your husband or if somebody says like, hey, why don't you sleep in this morning? I'll get the kids, like definitely take them up on that because you need that to take care of yourself. So look at all those things. I don't know if you guys are taking notes or not, but, kind of think through what's one thing that you're willing to do, a change. And again, it could be drink more water. It could be, add one more veggie, each day. It could be, let yourself take a nap. But if you can, just kind of mentally commit to one of those things. I know we're getting close on time, so I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. But okay, so emotional social is the next one. This is also really important. And the fact that you guys are all here and are all doing this meeting and are connecting with other women, I think you guys are already honestly have like a head start as, to a lot of moms. So who am I interacting with on a regular basis that energizes me or encourages me? Do I have healthy boundaries in place for relationship in my life that are difficult? We all have some relationship that causes us a little bit extra stress or is a little bit more challenging. So just think through, have you figured out a healthy way to navigate that? Or are you just kind of surviving, or maybe don't feel like you're surviving? If that's the case, then that's something to also attend to. How do I treat myself when I feel sad, angry, or overwhelmed? And what that's saying is, how do you treat your heart? Again, are you critical when you feel sad and angry and overwhelmed? Do you beat yourself up? Do you just say to yourself like, gosh, what's your problem? Why can't you do this? Everybody else is doing it. Or do you show yourself compassion? And do you take care of yourself? And do you acknowledge like, yeah, you know what? I've got a lot on my plate right now and I'm doing the best I can. And maybe I can do a little bit better, but we'll keep working at it. The other one is, do I compare myself with others and then feel, and this usually is the result of comparing yourself with others, either jealous, discontent, or prideful. The problem with comparing ourselves is we're trying to decide, okay, do you feel superior to these other people or do you feel inferior? So either way is really not good. So try to attend to that. And then what's one change I'm willing to make to care for myself better emotionally or socially? So again, it could be making time to connect one-on-one with a friend, once a week, just whether that's a phone call or, face-to-face or whatever. It could be, making that little nurture corner that I talked about and just kind of like emotionally and physically, like literally wrapping yourself up in that blanket when you feel sad. Or figuring out to maybe read the book Boundaries, figure out how to set some good, healthy boundaries for some relationships that are hard. If you haven't heard of that, it's been around for years. It's called Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. So, okay, so then the next one is mental. I think this is actually really important for moms too. Does what I'm putting into my mind in regards to music, movies, TV, and social media line up with my views? I think you have to be aware that everything you're putting into your mind is taking you in a direction. And so is it edifying? Is it something that would be, if you are seeking to live a life that is honoring to God, are those things honoring to God? Or is it maybe taking you the opposite direction? How much screen time do I have, and does it help or hurt me? I think this should kind of go along with the sleep one, because I think sometimes, it's amazing how we can just kill time, on just scrolling through our phones and not even realize. And that's what I mean by it's about choices rather than about time. Like, we do have some time that we just kind of let get sucked up by things unintentionally without even realizing it. So if you could take like maybe 30 minutes of screen time and swap that out for a nap, that might be significant. That could be a life changer, honestly. Do I feel mentally bored, or do I have some type of activity that mentally challenges me? Especially again, if you have little ones, that is important, and so realizing that you're mental capacity is important. And so, to figure out that that's something that, God might have something for you to be doing in that realm too. And then do my daydreams and do my thoughts honor God, my family, and myself. So I, again, just to be vulnerable, I years ago when we were, in the first few years of our marriage, and every marriage you go through that period of disillusionment where you're like, wow, this isn't exactly how I thought it would be. This is a little bit harder. And I had a job at the time where I was driving a lot, and so I'd get these little books on tape, and tape, that's how long ago it was actually, because it literally was a tape. So I would be driving along and I was listening, and they were like these, like, not like crazy romances, but like the whole like story about like, she's, not super happy with her nice, normal, ordinary guy. And then she meets this like, like Mr. Prince Charming that sweeps her off her feet. And so I was listening to these because they were passing the time when I was driving. And I realized I started becoming really discontent. And I realized like my husband started really irritating me. And just like, I started being really nitpicky and critical. And it actually started really getting into my heart in a really negative way. And God really convicted me. It was like, Julie, you need to stop. Like, this is not helping your case. And you know what? Satan would love nothing more than to destroy your marriage. And this is a big deal. And so you need to be mindful of what you're letting in. And so I want to take that like so super seriously and just take this opportunity to mention to you guys, because the enemy is super subtle. And, again, as a counselor, I work with couples all the time, and I work with a lot of couples that have, gone through the heartache of having affairs. And, especially with Christian couples, that's not how anybody ever starts. Like, they don't say, you know what, gosh, 10 years into our marriage, I think I'm going to have an affair. No, it doesn't start that way. It starts with those tiny little daydreams and those tiny little thoughts that they let their minds wander, and they let their thoughts run around, and they think, oh, it's not really a big deal. It's just like making me feel happy when I think about this. But what you think about eventually is what you eventually will do. And it feels like such a little baby step. So just be really, really, really careful. Be very mindful. Just want to say that as a word of warning, because I've seen too much of the heartache that happens when we let our guard down on that. Okay, so with all that, what is one change I'm willing to make to care for myself better mentally? Okay, about that. And we're almost done, and then we'll have discussion questions. Spiritually, do I feel close to God right now, or does he feel distant? And that's not necessarily like a self-care question. That's more just a reflecting question. Like, where am I? How do I feel? And just kind of honoring that this is, it matters, how you feel in relationship to God right now. Do I trust God to provide for me and to meet my needs? When you're not in a place that you feel like you can trust God to meet your needs, it's terrifying. It's really, really, really terrifying. And so again, that can bring you to a place of fear. And again, how do you treat yourself when you feel fearful? Do you condemn yourself? Are you mean to yourself? Or do you honor that and say, wow, I'm really scared. I need to figure this out. And do you seek godly counsel from friends? Do you seek counsel from scripture? Do you attend to that in a caring way? The next question is, am I intentionally spending time nurturing my relationship with God? That could be through reading the Bible. That could be prayer. That could be listening to services online. Hopefully a little bit of all of the above. But what are you doing something intentional? And then what are you doing to grow spiritually? And then what is one thing I'm willing to make, or one change I'm willing to make to care for myself spiritually? One thing that I do often advise women to do when they're in a place where they're dealing, I talk to a lot of women that are dealing with anxiety. I think that's one of the things that we battle with the most as moms, partly just because we don't stop. We just go. And so even just from a physical standpoint, our brains, our bodies don't know how to be calm and quiet and still. And so that can, even if we're not worried or fearful, we can still be feeling anxiety in our body just because of our pace that we keep. And so often, I think also because a lot of women, especially raised in the church, you feel so burdened and almost like this, this guilt about that I'm not doing enough spiritually. I'm not reading my Bible enough. I'm not praying enough. And so it feels like it becomes more like, what are you doing for God than what are you acknowledging that he's already done for you? And again, the scripture that says we love because he first loved us. So if you don't really have a sense that God loves you, you're going to be struggling to love other people. And so attend first to, let me see if I can wrap my mind around the fact that God actually loves me. And so this is my advice I give a lot of times. And I had to do this myself personally years ago. And it was, again, kind of life-changing, was maybe go through a little season where you're not that you stop reading your Bible. I'm not saying stop reading your Bible, but don't make it a checklist. Find some worship music some music is more affects our heart. Music gets to our soul, gets to our spirit. Put that on and sit with God. Just sit with him and ask him, God, what do you have for me right now? What are you saying to me? What is your message to me? And realize and pray and ask that he will make his presence known to you. Go back to your little nurture corner that I talked about, wrap yourself up, get comfy and just listen to his truth. And I like one of my favorites, and I have a ton of music that I love, but like Carrie Job is fantastic. She's one of my favorite ones. She's got, a lot of those very powerful worship songs that will just like literally like usher you into the presence of God. And I've seen just a lot of really powerful things happen in those moments. So do that, in terms of nurturing yourself. So I know I'm kind of going on and I want to leave some time. So Amy, I'll stop talking and then we can open it up.
No problem. Sorry, I just heard something fall. It looks like it's about to pour outside. Like everything's got windy all of a sudden. I heard something fall, and so sorry. I was writing so many things. Let me see if there's anyone that had a question. Yes,
I'm looking through this too.
Yeah, so much to chew on. Yes, me too. Is there anyone? Greta has a question. Let me unmute Greta. Greta, can you unmute yourself?
You're good, Greta. Go ahead.
Okay.
Hi, Julie.
Hi.
Thank you so much. I dropped my phone. I've had a cat that has been right in my face the whole time. I wanted to ask you if you find that not taking care of ourselves, not nurturing ourselves is the #1 killer for women.
Mm-hmm. Is that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find your face on here and I can't find you.
She's
There
labeled
I am.
built.
Can you see me?
Oh, there you are. Yes. So you were saying is not taking care of yourself the #1 killer of women?
Yes.
I think you could definitely say that, and because it can lead to every other reason why we harm ourselves,
Yeah. It just spills over. It just spills over into so many areas.
Mm-hmm.
And do you find also that we ladies don't even realize that we need to be nurturing ourselves more?
Absolutely.
Yes. So it's an awareness thing that we just need to be aware of.
Yes. We definitely need to be aware of it. Otherwise, we're just going to hear it as more things that, other people do, but that isn't super important for us. But it is.
Yes.
I see Heather's hand.
I feel like a quick thing that I learned. So when I glanced over your worksheet that you sent, I was like, okay, great. All things we've talked about before. Great. I feel prepared. My quick glance over. And then when I just hear you break it down and ask each question, it made me take a deep breath and go, oh, I should probably ask myself these questions every week or every day or whatever feels right for each person. But it was this moment of like, these are simple questions, but when I have to really sit here and write my answer down, I'm going, oh, sheesh. Okay, I need to evaluate these things each day. So thank you for breaking it down in a practical way. And I am going to make myself revisit these more often.
Well, and Heather, I think that brings up a good point, is that when you actually have to write something down, it's like you have to commit to your answer, and it makes you evaluate like more honestly and truthfully. So that's partly why I did leave the little line so you guys can write it down if you
I actually had a question kind of similar to that, because I think when I hear someone talk about this, and it's a reset button for me, and I'm like, oh yes, I need to be doing these things. And aside from literally going through these questions and having the handout as in a place that I see it often, I feel like, it can get off to a really good start, but how do I not fall back into that trap? And if I can't like go through these checkpoints that frequently, is there something else you recommend that we can do to kind of keep that awareness that Greta was talking about, and a little bit that Heather was talking about, like checking in?
Yeah, Amy, that's a great question, because I think, we can all be doing wonderful for like a couple days or even a week, and just complete to, old habits. And so I think that's one reason why having like community and having each other, and, being willing to let, you guys ask each other, how are you doing? How are you doing are you eating enough? Are you drinking? How are you doing? What are you doing to connect with God right now? And just inviting that and being welcome to that.
Okay.
So I'm Shauna. I'm new.
Hi.
But I'm very thankful for what you said about anxiety, because I tend to always think to my mind, could you turn off for a minute?
Hi.
There's
Where's
so many
Papa?
things
He's
going
back
on
in his
inside.
room. You can go see him.
I just sometimes cannot understand why am I thinking so much or so many things at one time. And I would ask myself, how do I turn off my brain for like 2 seconds and get some sleep or just relax? So I'm very happy about that, what you said about anxiety. So I'm going to work on it.
That's great. Well, you're not alone, Shauna, in dealing with that. I think it's the number one mental issue that most people deal with. So you're definitely not alone.
Julie, there was a question in the chat that just came up, and she said, I'm struggling with chronic illness, challenges of being a new mom, and feelings of being overwhelmed and anxious. And it's one of those things where she knows what she should be doing, but how do you make that jump into actually making it happen?
Challenges of feeling overwhelmed and anxious. So again, that's a great question. And again, I think that probably a lot of new moms feel that way, if not, all to some degree. But I would say start with just one, being very, very compassionate to yourself, and knowing that those are real struggles, especially if you're struggling with chronic illness and being a new mom and, other stuff too, and anxiety. That's a lot of hard stuff. And so being very, very kind. There's a song I love, Be Kind to Yourself by Andrew Peterson. Listen to that, just kind of meditate on that. But also, again, I would say definitely be willing to ask for help, because you need help right now. You do. If you're a new mom and you're not feeling physically awesome and you need help, and I know you've got some people here that are willing to help you. Just with the physical needs, if nothing else, Amy, do you have anything that you would add to that?
Can I just add something real quick? Hi, Julie, I'm Tanya. I just wanted to, for those that missed the beginning, and it kind of goes along with what Shauna was saying, is can you just give an affirmation or something for those women that struggle with mommy guilt?
So I think that we all feel that. I think as moms, you can feel like every single day like you're completely failing, because it's just hard. And especially if you're looking for that affirmation, from your kids, like you're just probably not going to get that your kids at all. Your husband probably doesn't understand at all the significance of what you do. I mean, if he does, great, welcome that. But I think most husbands don't realize how hard it is. And then even with each other, I think we can get stuck in that trap of like comparing ourselves to each other. So what we do is we compare our weaknesses to somebody else's strengths, and we forget that we all have different strengths, and so it's really hard. I mean, being a mom, it's not a simple thing, but it's, I truly believe this, that God gives you the children that he intentionally chose for you. And he gives children the parents that he intentionally chose for them. So it's not by accident. It's not like God's like, whoops, I didn't mean to, give you a child with that kind of issue. It might stretch you to every limit and every capacity that you feel like you have, but he is going to equip you. And if you feel like, okay, God, I don't know, this one is just too hard. This is over my head. That's okay, because that is where you will be able to let his strength come through. And I don't say that flippantly, because my children are, both of them, I love them, but they are not easy. They both have completely opposite personalities from me in every way, not in every way, in a lot of ways. And it's just hard. They're both super strong-willed, and I was not a strong-willed child. And so it was like a little bit of a learning curve. And so I constantly felt like I was just not being a good mom. It was super hard. And so, again, seek help and give yourself grace, and you're doing the best you can. And when you feel overwhelmed, like, God is going to give you strength if you seek him in that.